Thank everyone for coming tonight. We are here to give you information on Proposition S.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm going to speak up as loud as I can, but you're not going to be able to hear me anyway. We're here to give you information on Proposition S, which is on the April 2nd ballot. It's a stormwater proposition. We got about a 10 to 15 minute presentation that Matt's going to give, which is why all the poster boards and the slideshow. After that, we'll take as much time as you need for question and answers. I know there's not a lot of you here, but if it ends up being a lot of you, we'll have to go in some sort of organized order. If you haven't already noticed, the video camera here is going. We are video of the meeting. We plan on putting that on our website and our social media pages in the next day or two. So just be aware of that. Also, you can go there and share it with your neighbors and friends and other voting people. Like I mentioned, we will stay around as long as necessary to answer any questions that are needed. And we got business cards you can always call afterwards as well. There is another duplicate meeting to this on the 28th of March in this same room at 6:30 p.m. Again. So if you know somebody who wasn't able to attend tonight and they didn't get their question answered from the video or whatever, they're welcome to come next time, or you can come back and ask more questions. Just to introduce the BPW people that are here. This is Matt Munslinger. He's our utility planning and construction engineer. He is also in charge of the developing stormwater department. He also is in charge of the GAC water project. So Matt has a lot of responsibility at BPW. Andrea Campbell is the stormwater coordinator. She basically is the only full-time person in the stormwater department as of today. She takes care of all the environmental permitting and stuff like that, stream team, all the fun stuff in the stormwater department. Carrie Goodman, the camera lady right there, is the PR coordinator and communications person at the BPW. So if you follow our Facebook page or any of our social media sites, she is the one that comes up with all that information and puts it out there. And if you don't follow our pages, we would love for you to follow our pages. And we got several board members and councilmen in the crowd. Stephen Franke is a board member. Steve Smith, board member. Lane Rosenkrantz is the president of the board. Mike Dobson is a councilman, and I believe a mayor pro tem, right? And Jim Van Hoos is a councilman as well. About half the crowd is city employees. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to give you as much information about Proposition S as we can, and we'll take questions.
Good. Thanks for coming this evening. Presentation is going to go through three main parts. First one is kind of what is the history of the stormwater system in Hannibal, the evolution of the stormwater utility. As he mentioned, it's something new that we're venturing into. And then also, what is the plan moving forward? So in the past, it was kind of a split responsibility. The city was responsible for maintaining ditches, swales, stuff above ground, where the Board of Public Works was responsible for maintaining the infrastructure below ground. The funding, there wasn't a sole source of funding for any of these repairs. It was as funding was available, I'm guessing through the general fund with the street department and the Board of Public Works, the burden fell upon the sewer utility. And then also, problems. As the infrastructure aged, more and more problems developed. These were more and more costly repairs. And I think it was back in about 2015, about 4 or 5 problems surfaced. We're not saying there's not more out there, but those are the ones that made it to the surface. And the cost estimates to fix those repairs or fix those problems that were found at that time were probably was going to be in the millions of dollars. And neither the city nor the Board of Public Works had the funding in place to do those repairs. Another thing was there wasn't a comprehensive map of any of the stormwater infrastructure within the city. It was all, You know, if there were plans, it was when that street was developed or that subdivision was developed. There wasn't a comprehensive map that showed, you know, what was private stormwater infrastructure, and then again, what it was public stormwater infrastructure. And then MS4 compliance. That is a permit that the city holds with the State Department of Natural Resources. And it's worried more about water quality rather than the quantity of water. You know, transporting water off the streets into the ditches as quick as we can to make the streets safe to drive. This MS4 permit is, again, focused on the quality of that water that is being discharged into those streams. And that was something that came about to the city back in the early 2000s. To speak to the mapping problem, here's a map as of February 1st this year. Over here on this easel closest to Andrea is a stormwater map that was as of March 1st of this year. Back in November of 2017, once it was decided that we were moving forward with the utility, a GIS technician was hired full-time, and since that time he has been going out collecting all the infrastructure he can find. If he's walking down the street and sees inlets, he picks that up with his GPS equipment, comes back to our building, you know, puts all that information in the computer, and we're developing a comprehensive map of what infrastructure is out there. At this point, we're not going through and determining what is public, what is private. That will be the next phase in this mapping process. We'll determine, you know, is it a city responsibility to maintain? Is it a private individual's responsibility to maintain it? And then we'll go forward with, you know, determining whether, once it is determined that it is a city responsibility, do we have the necessary easements or, you know, is it in the street right of way to where we can maintain it? To speak to the problems of the infrastructure, this is a couple of pictures of a storm sewer that runs from Virginia down across Broadway, across Chestnut and Hope, and discharges into the creek. There was a previous repair made, I don't know the exact time, but you can see they went in and put this corrugated metal pipe inside the concrete box culvert that was there. We're assuming because the concrete box culvert had failed, this was the easiest way they could do it. They could put this together in one hole, shove it up to where the repair was needed, and go on. But over time, this was not maintained either. And so the floor of the pipe rusted out, allowed this metal pipe to come out around, and you can actually see here in this picture the void that is between the box structure, and then also how the pipes have come apart. So this is located roughly 20-25 feet underground. It came up in the surface in an alley, and you know, we were standing in a hole that was excavated in an alley to make a repair to make the alley usable again. We didn't venture up this because we don't know the structural integrity of this pipe. So that's going to be another challenge that we face moving forward. And again, the only reason we were aware of this is because the alley, there was a sinkhole that developed in the alley, and the alley started falling in. And without that, we wouldn't even known this problem had existed. Another one is down on Martin Street, off Fulton Avenue. You can see here, the wall of the box culvert is shifted in. A sinkhole was found in the street, and then the street department went to fill it in with flowable fill, and it never hit an end. It just kept going in. So we did some investigative work with it, and this sinkhole, they put the flowable fill in, and it's down here in the box culvert now. We started out with one hole, and now we've got 3 or 4 holes that have developed. This box culvert's only a couple inches below, right underneath the asphalt. And for the length of Martin Street, it's in bad shape. This has required that we close one lane of traffic, so it's only allowing traffic here on the far right side.
Sorry, how long has that been like that, approximately? 2 years?
It's probably been since 2016. And then to come into regulatory compliance. MS4 permit, there's 6 minimum control measures that your program has to contain. Back when the Board of Public Works was given control of this permit back in 2017, it required us to update our stormwater management plan, which we did and submitted to Missouri Department of Natural Resources back in May of 2018. And then it required certain goals that were set for each one of these 6 control measures. The example of public education and outreach. You know, do we go out and talk about pollutants to school-age kids, or do we talk at public meetings? These are things that we're required to track and note to DNR every 2 years when our report is due. These requirements are not going away. These are requirements that are only going to become more strict as we move forward. And they're not concerned about the stormwater infrastructure per se. They're more worried about the quality of water at the end of the pipe when we're discharging to Bear Creek or the Mississippi River.
So, Matt, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, in other words, they're just telling us to do something,
Yep.
and they're saying, we don't care how it gets done, but you have to do it.
They have certain guidelines that we have to implement. We have to set measurable goals.
Okay.
We're saying we're going to do 6 social media posts a year. And so we post those on the social media. We track how many views, how many shares that we have. We put that in a folder, and then at our 2-year mark, when we have to submit our report to DNR, we print that out and include that in our submittal to them. We submitted that back to DNR for review back in 2018, May of 2018, and we still haven't received thumbs up or thumbs down on whether or not our goals are good for the requirements.
So
They've had turnover, and so nobody has reviewed it.
would it be fair to call that an unfunded mandate?
Yes. I mean, there is no funding available to do that, and it's required. You know, they can come after us with penalties. I can't remember what the one was. We got a penalty in the mail. It wasn't $50, I think, because a piece of paper wasn't submitted or on time, or something hadn't been done. It was something that we were unaware that even was required, and so.
And the example Matt gave as far as a social media post, that is relatively insignificant when it comes to cost. It's usually just someone like me trying to find material to post. But another example is we have to do illicit discharge detection and elimination. So basically part of that is all of the outfalls that are in town. And number 3, all of the outfalls that are in town, we have to develop a plan that we can actually test those outfalls during dry weather. And if we find a pollutant, like a sewer, maybe is attached somewhere in that storm drain and is being emitted into the creek, we have to spend time to try to find where that is and eliminate it. And so that would cost a lot of money just to get them off of the system. So when he gives an example, some of them are relatively insignificant when it comes to cost, but then others of it, they're going to be very costly.
And that's where the development of the map comes into play. If we have an outfall here that we're testing, we got to know where it goes upstream so that we know even where to look for a problem should we find something like that.
How many outfalls?
We're up to 35 right now, but we're getting more of them. It's something he hadn't changed in the map. I talked a bit with you about it the other day. We're finding a lot more than that. And when we got the program, there was 22.
22, yeah.
So that was what the city thought they had back when they were in charge of the program. So how did the Board of Public Works become responsible for the stormwater utility? Back in June of 2017, there was a resolution passed that directed us to develop the utility, do the funding, or get a secure source of funding, and make the necessary repairs or improvements as needed. So How the board took that was they contracted with Black and Beach Engineers in September of 2017 to help us set up that utility. None of us at the utility had ever been on the front end of setting up a utility. You know, what type of services, you know, what type of funding do we need, and how do we develop a fee structure to get that? So when we started looking at it, what things did we need to have, in our opinion, to set up a new stormwater utility? First is, again, a dedicated funding source. We didn't need anything. We needed something that we could plan on having year after year so that we can do the necessary maintenance and O&M that is required of the storm sewer system. Allows for a comprehensive management plan, you know, not only the infrastructure, but also to meet the requirements of the MS4 permit. And then also how to make it equitable to all the customers within the city. You know, we don't want one group or another paying more than their fair share. We got to look at, and this is a map done by Western Kentucky University back in 2017, and all the numbers indicate, you know, how many stormwater utilities there are in each individual state. And at that time, there were only 4. There was a total of 1,639 at that time. And in the 2018 survey, it's already up to 1,681. So roughly 40 new utilities in a single year. Other communities are facing similar problems that we are. I know locally, Moberly, Missouri is going through the same thing.
I have another question. This map doesn't look to be based on politics of a region. It's kind of bizarre almost. What, can you lend any insight into why
It would probably go back to some of it is state legislators, some states do not allow the development of a stormwater utility.
Okay.
Some of it is just political preference.
Okay.
You know, example, I attended a conference out in Colorado where, you know, their water can become a pretty scarce resource during certain times of the year. So they want to protect it as much as they can. So if, say a contractor was excavating for a foundation and there was groundwater coming into that excavation, in order for that contractor to pump that water out, and if that water was to leave the property, that person would have to have a permit. And so political preference is a lot of it. Some of it is driven by, you know, how they view that resource as well. So
Some of that too is industry. For example, Texas and Florida, you've got the petroleum industry in Texas, and they're real funny about their runoff in
Okay.
Texas. So there's nowhere for the water to go, basically.
okay,
It runs out to the Gulf.
yeah. So where we went from there was, again, working with Black and Beach. The first contract was these 3 items here. This is the total roadmap to going live with a funded utility. But again, the first 3 are, you know, what are we looking to provide? What services are we looking to do? And then how are we going to pay for that? You know, we develop a capital plan and best guess on what type of resources and the cost of those resources to do what we said we're going to do here in the program definition. And then how to make it an equitable rate structure moving forward. So how does that fall into play here? You know, again, we've got capital investment in our stormwater infrastructure. How do we maintain it and ensure that it lasts, you know, well beyond where we're going to be here, and make it so that we're not wasting money by putting unnecessary things in. You know, level of service again goes back to what do we want to provide. You know, we've got deferred maintenance. Nobody has really maintained this system in the past. It was all on a as-needed basis. If a drain wasn't flowing, then we did something. If a pothole showed up, then we did something. We were never out there looking like we do with the sewer system. We weren't doing routine cleaning, routine televised inspections. So everything is reactionary. Then we had the MS4 regulatory compliance mandates, and then also what does the community want? You know, whether it be newly installed infrastructure to put curb and gutter on streets, or you know, there's a low spot on the street that isn't draining and maybe needs some look at the inlet, or you know, debris caught in it. Again, funding is a big source, or a big item. You know, it has to be adequate. It has to be reliable so that we're not fluctuating much up and down yearly, so that we know how to plan moving forward. And then again, meeting the customer's needs, you know, making sure that they feel that they're getting the service for the fee that they're paying.
So your funding estimate, is that going to cover curbs and that stuff, or are we still
Not at this
focusing
time.
underground mostly and on permanent?
We're focusing on the permit. We're focusing on some type of condition assessment. We do know some of these items that need repaired because they have came to the surface. But bigger question is, what is still lurking below ground that we don't know about? And we want to make sure we're spending the money that we have, that we do. Should we have money coming in, we want to make sure we're spending it as wise as we can. Over here on this third storyboard, there's a 5-year plan laid out, you know, after the implementation of the utility, projected to be July of 2020. And that is what this funding is based upon. Why a user fee? Because we can reference it between provided service and funding. It's dedicated just to the stormwater department. We can't take it to go put in a new sewer system or new water main. It provides an equitable cost share between the different customers that we have. You know, somebody that doesn't have a bunch of property is going to be paying on a percentage the same share as somebody that has, you know, say 10 or 20 acres here in town. And then it also allows us the ability to incentivize best management practices, you know, rain gardens, things of that nature that allow the water to be absorbed in the ground rather than run off. And by having a fee, you can schedule that fee to help drive the implementation of those BMPs. So how do we do the multi-year financial plan? Again, we looked at the O&M requirements, what capital investments that we had outlined, and then also any reserve requirements that we have with the utility. We come up with a multi-year financial plan. Again, it's over here on this third storyboard. And then moving forward in the year 2021, fiscal year 2021, how those revenues stack up against the services and the cost that we would have providing those services. Again, this is just a duplicate of what is over on that board there. So how we came upon the billable units was we took information available from both the county assessor's office with their aerials. They know building footprints, you know, size of driveways and stuff like that we can pull from that information that we got. And what we came up with was there would be roughly 370,000 or 370 million square feet of impervious area within the city limits. Through going through a vetting process, total building units that we would end up with would be roughly 208,000 units. That's because, you know, maybe somebody tore a house down or what was available through the county assessor's office isn't what actually is installed any longer. So we built in a little bit of a factor for appeals. so that we can make sure that we're charging based upon what is actually there and not something from a picture a couple years ago. And then again, implementation of credits, going above and beyond what is currently, or what is in the city code, and incentivizing people to do so. We took that, those billable units, we knew what our revenue requirements were by laying out what our services were and the costs associated with those services. So you just divide the revenue by the number of billable units, and you end up with our proposed stormwater user fee. And that proposed stormwater user fee is $1.39 per 500 square foot. That is something that, again, Black and Beach is working with utilities across the nation, and that's the normal unit is a equivalent residential unit for stormwater. So again, that's based upon the impervious area for a given parcel. Impervious area being anything not allowing water to penetrate the ground and be absorbed. So roofs, driveways, sidewalks, decks, pools, those type of things. And again, based upon the information that we had, the stormwater rate of $1.39 per 500 square feet. So that leads us to what Proposition S is. It is a proposition that the council has placed on the April 2nd ballot, allowing us to collect a fee for the development and continuation of this stormwater utility. Yes,
Can I
sir.
ask a question?
Yes, sir.
How will you calculate my home? My home, none of the water running off from my home runs into a storm drain of any sort, runs into a creek.
Okay.
So how would you calculate mine?
Again, by impervious area, roof line. It's still part of the conveyance system that we're responsible for maintaining.
If none of the water from my home in my area, I own almost 2 acres, and I live at the top of a hill, and all runs off and down into a creek. So how can you be honest and give me a fair rating? Because none of the water from my runoff runs into a storm sewer, and you're charging people by the usage of a storm sewer.
We're charging it by impervious area, by roof line or driveway of that. We're not charging by use of storm sewer.
Well, I don't quite understand the driveway part of it, what you're saying.
The driveway doesn't allow water that falls to enter the ground. It all runs off as runoff.
Yeah, but it's still, my driveway runs off into a creek.
That creek still needs maintenance.
I'm sorry?
That creek still needs maintenance.
Still need maintenance.
Yeah.
Who does the maintenance on it?
Us or the street department.
You gotta be kidding me. When does
Downstream.
the street department do
Nobody now.
maintenance?
Nobody now, but in the future.
Okay, I'll stop.
I mean,
I'll stop.
there's certain things that it requires, whether it be eating
Well.
out in properties. An example would be, I forget exactly how much it cost, but down at the end of Spruce Street, that creek there was encroaching on properties and on the street, and the city put in a big gabion basket wall to help protect it. You remember how,
Well, it's a couple $100,000 or $150,000.
and that's probably been 10 years ago. So there is maintenance that goes on in the creeks and streams in town. So if the proposition were to pass, we would be focusing on these three next items before going live. You know, we'd have to finish the development of the stormwater ordinances, the business process within our office. How do we track, you know, changes in property? How do we make sure we get the right property owner? Because some of these properties do not currently have a Board of Public Works utilities. You know, they're not a sewer customer or a water customer. So some of these would be getting a stormwater only bill. How does that process work internally? And then how does that integrate with our current billing system? Talking with our current billing system software provider, it would take roughly 9 months to develop that process so that we made sure that we got, you know, again, the correct property owner gets the right bill, and again, how how does that process get updated? So that's why if this did pass this April, we would not anticipate going live with a stormwater fee until July of 2020. Again, that allows time to develop the processes that are needed internally, but also gives us time to do some checks and balances with the program before bills will be sent out to customers.
You couldn't go through the city property tax rolls and bill it annually like they do the rest of the stuff?
The confusion with that would be whether it's a tax or a fee. It's something we could discuss. We'd have to involve other entities at this time, since the city doesn't collect its own taxes any longer. They partner with the counties. And so that's something we'd have to work out.
If approved by the voters, that's an option.
Still.
One of the things you didn't touch on too was that $1.39 is a monthly fee.
It is a monthly fee, yes.
If I may,
Yeah.
let me preface, I've got a couple of questions. Let me preface by saying, you guys will be commended for all the work that you've done on this problem, which has been, as you said, catch-as-catch-can sort of situations in the city of Hannibal for the last 100+ years. And it's all kind of, from my recollection and experience, fallen on the street department and the city's general fund to deal with these problems. And so this is the beginning of what I think should be a much better organized and forward-looking program. Now, in spite of that, you said that the money that would be collected on this cannot go for any other purpose. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Where does it say that?
I believe it's the accounting,
There's a
the
gas-
utility accounting guidelines, like now.
Where would I go see those guidelines?
There's a GASB guideline.
There's a what?
GASB guideline, GASB. It's an accounting law. I don't know the exact spot, but I can find it for you. Basically,
What book would I look in?
it's a GASB book.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's an accounting. I can get it for you.
It's a
Basically-
generally accepted accounting standard.
Well, I understand that, but the generally accepted accounting doesn't have anything to do with municipal finance.
It does. There's a.
Well, it does when Wade Staples comes down and audits it, but it doesn't tell you what, it doesn't come
It
down
said
and tell you.
you can't, I thought it was a Hancock amendment. It
No.
said you can't use tax for something other than what you collected for.
No, that's true. Well,
It's
in this situation,
Now, this is a fee, not a tax.
I would suggest that the Hancock Amendment does not have anything to do with whatever we're going to do next pursuant to the proposition up for vote April the 2nd. The Hancock Amendment tells you what you have to do in order to get a license fee or tax increase. It doesn't restrict what a city can do with the taxes that it has.